Hello there. This is Welsh ASMR 82. Hey, how you doing? In today's video, an ASMR map video, you may think, maybe you can't even hear it, but you may think I've put some rain sounds in the background. No, I live in Wales, so we are going through a really big storm at the moment and it's pouring down outside. I just got caught in it, trying to take the dog for a walk. So I've dried her off and I'm doing this video for you instead. It'll save me lots of time in editing, so I don't have to add rain sounds in the background or anything like some people do. They should just move to Wales. Okay, so what are we doing today? We're doing North America, and I've got lots of interesting maps to show you. We're using this atlas again. It's the Modern School Atlas by Phillips. And we've already done a couple of videos. Plus, I've done a couple of extra videos. I've done this one in Spanish already on my Spanish channel. And I've done the South American one in Spanish and in Portuguese. On this channel, I think I've done Africa and Asia maybe, and the UK. So today what are we looking at? We're looking at North America. We're going to be looking at climate. So the climate, rainfall and temperature, annual precipitation, biomes, as well as population concentration and density, age ranges of the population, population change, and wealth. I also just spotted something I hadn't spotted for the other sections. Tourism in the USA, which is quite cool. So if you are from North America, or you just have an interest in it, then this video is ideal for you. Okay, let's start off with these two maps. This one is a political map to show us the countries in the continent of North America. We'll look at that second. We'll look at this one first. It's a relief, and we can see the backbone of the continent here running all the way down its spine, right the way from Alaska into Canada, back into the Americas, particularly through here, and into most of Mexico actually, apart from the Yucatan Peninsula, which is lowland, and down through most of the states of Central America. And then we can actually see South America here with the Andes beginning. That's not to say that the east of the United States doesn't have any mountains. We've got this mountain range here, the Appalachian Mountains. I can't pronounce it properly. Appalachian. Just running up here. And we have some in the area of Labrador as well. And of course we've got the Great Plains there, running down here. And the Great Lakes here. Hudson Bay, of course, to the north. And we shouldn't forget about Greenland as well, which is part of the continent, albeit owned by Denmark. You can just see Iceland as well off the coast, which is I believe is on the European continent. Shelf. Plate. Okay, so I explained a little bit about Greenland. Greenland is part of Denmark. Iceland is an independent sovereign country in Europe. Then we have Canada. Massive, massive Canada. All of that. And then we've got the USA. So the USA is split with Alaska up here. This, incidentally, is Russia on the Asian continent, the Asian part of Russia. And if you're wondering, this is the Bering Strait, and it's assumed that humans crossed the ocean when there was a land bridge, or an ice bridge, excuse me, here, and came into the Americas that way. At one point, Alaska was actually part of the Russian Federation, well, not the Russian Federation, because that's what it's called now, but the Russian territory, let's call it. But the USA bought it from Russia. I don't even think it was that expensive. Probably was at the time. The rest of the contiguous United States is down here, stretching from east to west or right across the continent. Then we've got Mexico, starting with Baja California here. So this is California, this is Baja California, Lower California. The main body of Mexico here, including the Yucatan Peninsula, where it is assumed the meteorite that caused all the troubles that wiped out the dinosaurs hit around here. And then mainland North America, we've got Belize, Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, and lastly Panama, where you'll have the Panama Canal. One of the only ways to get, apart from, well, you can't go over, and the seas are terrible if you go under through Tierra del Fuego. So one of the safest routes from the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific Ocean is via Panama. And I suppose you could include the Caribbean. I suppose it's on the same plate. So we've got Cuba, the island of Hispaniola, which houses Haiti and Dominican Republic. Haiti, French-speaking, Dominican Republic, Spanish-speaking. Jamaica. Many, many, many other islands, including the Bahamas. And we've got Puerto Rico, capital San Juan. Puerto Rico is a territory owned by the United States. Weird situation of Puerto Rico, beautiful, beautiful island. I'll do a video on it at some point. They're not considered to be a state and they can't vote, I believe, for presidential elections, whereas Hawaii can. Many other islands down here as well. Okay, let's look then at climate and biomes to begin with. Right, climate. So being a northern hemisphere continent, like Europe and much of Asia, or about half of Asia I suppose, we have winter in January and we have summer in July. this seems like a really obvious thing to say for people like myself from a northern European country. However, when we do the one for South America, it's the opposite, because January is their summer and July is their winter, which blows my mind. The fact that Australians have Christmas in the summer just freaks me out. Okay. Very Northern Hemisphere-centric individual. I apologise, I'm learning. So, what does that mean? It means that the northern part of Canada and Greenland faces temperatures of up to -40 in January. See if I can read it in this low, dim light. Lowest recorded temperature in North America was somewhere. Snag. -63. But the further you go down, the closer to the equator you become. That's not the equator, the next one down is the equator. That must be the Tropic of... That's the Tropic of Cancer. The Tropic of Capricorn must be down. So, becoming very close to the equator, you'll find that southern parts of Mexico have similar temperatures all year round. For example, in Yucatan it says 24 in January, but 28 in July. However, they possibly would get more rain depending on the year. We'll have a little look at that in a second. So even if the temperatures are the same, you tend to have a rainy season. Okay, and you can see obviously Florida, 19 in January, 28 in July. So decent weather in the winter even, but very warm in the summer. There's also another general rule that the further you are from the coast, the lower the temperatures in winter and the higher the temperatures in summer, which is why Siberia exists somewhere that has permanent permafrost, because it's so far from the sea. So concentrating on July then, it says the highest recorded temperature in North America is Death Valley, California, I guess, and that was 57 degrees Celsius. I don't know what the Fahrenheit is, I apologize. Okay, let's look at precipitation then. We'll look at these charts first and then we'll look at the general map. So we've got, for example, Chicago to begin with. We can see a peak in temperatures in the middle of the year, in June, July and August, and falling temperatures for December and January, February. Precipitation does get stronger in around April, March and May. So I would say Chicago has very similar experiences to Britain in terms of its weather. It's a pattern that I'm very familiar with. April showers, we call it. Denver is it has a similar case. There's a greater range of temperature. It can go between -10 and 0 in January, whereas Chicago is usually a bit more predictable. Now we can see Los Angeles, which is further down in the country, and as I said, the closer you get to the centre of the planet, the less variance there is on temperature, and so we see a far straighter line, as we do in Mexico City and to an extent in Miami. San Salvador, which is closer to the equator, still has a very straight line, albeit with quite large temperature ranges. Vancouver over here also starts at 0 and peaks at around 20 degrees in the summer months. However, this doesn't always marry up with precipitation, i.e. rain. For example, as I suggested earlier on, San Salvador, close to the equator, does clearly have a lot of rain in the summer and spring and autumn, whereas the winter, December, January, February and to an extent March as well, are particularly dry. This isn't quite the same case for New York, however, which temperatures vary between 0 and nearly 30 degrees Celsius in the summer, but there seems to be a constant level of precipitation across the year regardless. Miami does have a rainy emphasis in the late summer, early autumn, but less so in winter. Mexico has less rain overall, very little in winter and to an extent early spring, but much more in the summer months. Whereas Vancouver has a lot of rain in December, January, and far less in the summer months. That's something more similar to the UK. We have a lot less rain in the summer compared to the winter. Let's now look at the annual precipitation, and we can see dry spots. So although we have a nice picture here, we can see that, for example, over here in California and surrounding states, obviously there's a desert here, Death Valley, and others, Las Vegas for example. So we can see far less precipitation, between 0 and 250 millimeters, and that's the average annual precipitation. Salt Lake, for example, gets 389 millimeters, but Los Angeles only gets 329. Miami, on the other hand, a tropical region, we'll learn more about that in a second, gets 1,518 millimeters. Kingston, capital of Jamaica, gets over 800 millimeters, and Havana, capital of Cuba, 1,200 plus. Panama, 1,700 plus. And Mexico City gets just over 700 millimeters. The driest recorded year in North America was in a place called Batake, and it was 30 millimeters of rain only, opposed to the wettest. I'm just laughing because I know that Washington State has this reputation as being quite a wet state, but also Vancouver here, just north of the border, 1,529, and the highest recorded was in Henderson Lake, 6,500 millimeters in 1 year. And then we see as we get towards the North Pole, it gets drier again. Assuming because the air is a lot drier and so it doesn't rain at all and would just snow, which I don't think is included in this measurement at all. Okay, and then finally biomes. So again, towards the Arctic, we've got tundra and alpine environments. Mixed in with Canada here, we've got the second colour, which represents coniferous forest. I nearly said carnivorous forest. I don't think so. Coniferous forest, conifers. And then if we look towards the drier side of, I say drier side, it's not actually the driest, well, it is both the wet and dry. We've got scrub and semi-desert, actual desert here in the middle of Mexico, and here and here. The Great Plains, I think we are going to use grassland for that, mixed in with broad leafed forest and meadow. But coming over to Miami, we've got the subtropical rainforest and actual rainforest down here in Costa Rica, Panama, Honduras, etc. And on the Yucatan Peninsula, we've got tropical thorn forest, as well as some places on both the coasts of Mexico and possibly southern Texas as well. Let's talk about population. So to remind you, population density, the colour rises, and over 200 people per kilometre squared. And obviously we know that this area of the United States is a lot more populated than the Midwest, for example, as is California a lot more populated than, for example, Washington State. Of Mexico's population, the vast majority of people either live on the borderlands or in this central area here. And we can see that this is pointed out strongly with these boxes where it says population of major cities in millions. Los Angeles having over 10 million, as does Mexico City, one of the most populated cities on the planet, and New York. And the next size down is between 5 and 10 million, which would bring in Toronto, Dallas, Houston, Miami, Philadelphia, DC, Chicago, Atlanta. And then you've got the much smaller ones. Cities, for example, like Monterrey, with 2.5 to 5 million. And then Austin, with 1 to 2.5. San Antonio. Is that a circle for San Antonio, which would be between 0.5 and 1 million? I really like these diagrams. They explain a lot of information about population density. Sorry, age of population. For example, Canada, the USA, Mexico, and Bahamas. So Canada, we can see that Canada have quite a lot of over 75-year-olds in their country compared to Mexico and the Bahamas. And the green is for men, the pink is for women. So we can see a much larger population of over 75-year-old women. In fact, there are more in Canada than they have young people. Again, they seem to be a slightly different situation with the men, but there are fewer children in Canada than there are with people between the ages of 54 and 45. What does that mean? It means that Canada's going to have an issue with the workforce when this band get older. Obviously some will die in the meantime, but we're talking about a fact that there are fewer young people than there are people who are reaching retirement age. And that's why every day I see adverts for migration to Canada, come to Canada, work in Canada. It's an issue that Canada have, by the looks of it, reading this graph, if I'm reading it correctly. Canada's population is 34.6 million, much smaller than the other states here. The United States, 316 million, Mexico, 116 million, and then the Bahamas, one of the larger of the islands, 6 million, 0.3 million. We don't have that issue as much in the Bahamas. They've got the same level of men and women who are below 4 years old as they do for most of their population. Mexico has got this bottle look about it, which means that the under 19s are the largest population group, and they don't have many people hitting retirement age at the moment in the next couple of years. The USA, and you should see this particular demographic, is always consistent, that women live longer than men. And USA is fairly equal, curiously. I thought they would have a larger percentage down here, but there we go. Let's look at population change then. Population change means that this colour, this darker pink here, like in Texas, in Florida, and I want to say Maine, maybe not. This is the average annual population change. This had over 15% population change. Whereas the Midwest have had under 5% change. So it tends to make me feel that people are either migrating to these states or some other issues happening. Mexico in general has a 10 to 15% change, in Canada less so. It's 5 to 10%. And then the last one here before we look at the last map is wealth. Gross domestic product in dollars per capita of 2012. We can see the certain states. I want to say North Dakota. Can anyone drop a comment and say why North Dakota is so rich in comparison with other states? Texas is quite high compared to the states surrounding it, and this state here, is that Oklahoma, is one of the poorest, I guess, through natural disasters, with under 30,000 GDP. In fact, the whole of Mexico, it doesn't break Mexico down into its states, but the whole of Mexico is classed as also having under 30,000. And not breaking Canada down into its constituent parts, overall it's giving it 40,000 to 50,000 GDP, which is very good. We can see the colour change here in the mountain region. Are these the Rockies? Is that what they're called? The Rocky Mountains. And we can see Denver right at the peak there. Salt Lake City as well. Okay, last little map then, before we finish today. Let's have a look at tourism in the USA. Now, I have contributed to this map because I've been to Orlando twice as a tourist. So the major areas for tourism in the US are this area in the north, the northeast, obviously New York, Washington DC, Boston, but also Atlantic City and Philadelphia. I'm guessing Atlantic City might be for... I wonder whether this data includes internal tourism as well. Because I'd never heard of Atlantic City until I watched an episode of some program and it said that Americans go there on holiday. Maybe it's to do with people from New York going on holiday internally in the United States. And of course some people would definitely go to Florida, Orlando, Miami, Tampa. I went to Orlando and Tampa. And then... No, I'm not sure about this one. Is this to do with Mount Rushmore? Is it around this area? The Rocky Mountains. It's a major national park, major tourist centres. Wonder what would be around here. And then you've got this vast area. So you've got California, obviously. But then you've also got Las Vegas, the Grand Canyon. What else have you got around here? The Great Basin, Yosemite, Death Valley. And then you've got the San Francisco, Los Angeles, Las Vegas cities as well. And also Chicago, apparently. Interesting. If anyone can imagine why people are going there, let me know. Is that Kansas? As a little bonus at the end of this video, there's some information on the Haiti earthquake, talking about the Caribbean plate, so it isn't actually on the North American plate. In fact, the Caribbean plate seems to contain quite a lot of southern Mexico and the Central American countries as well. On the diagram here we can see many active active volcanoes. So it does suggest that this plate is one that is quite active and moving. There's the Puerto Rico Trench there. The Cayman Trench. Okay, and very last one, hurricanes. So you can see the outline of Florida here, and then the Gulf of Mexico, Yucatan Peninsula, Cuba, Hispaniola, and we can see its paths, the paths of the different ones. So Ike, Francis, George, Andrew, Hugo, and Gilbert, Ivan, and Charlie. But also, curiously, there are ones that started here. Gordon, which went that way apparently. Sandy, which went right that way. And Wilma, Stan. I suppose maybe they were ones that came off the end of another one, because I think the way that hurricanes form, they form in the Horn of Africa, not the Horn of Africa, the sort of, yeah, near Africa and come across the sea, so they can't just form there. But I think maybe that was one that broke away from another one or something. But you can see that most of them come up here and hit this area. This particular one was Katrina. That's the one that did a lot of damage to New Orleans. Okay, right. Mitch was a bit of a weird one. Look at Mitch. He went on land and then back off, which is extremely unusual. Okay, I'm going to leave it there. I hope that you've enjoyed this video. I did put it up a week early on Patreon, as I do with all my videos. I put them up a couple of days early at least. I was quite organised with this one now. So if you do want to see early videos, early content from this channel, and also an extra exclusive video that no one else sees, which is a little ramble once a month by me, with the intention of doing exclusive map videos on Patreon as well in the future. Join my Patreon, and all of the tiers get the same, so you can join any tier you want to and you'll get the same as everyone else. Okay, thank you so much for watching. Click like, comment, subscribe, all that jazz, and I'll see you again really soon. Okay, we'll have South America and Australasia coming pretty soon to complete this mini-series.